AP 120, Chapter 5, Topics Connective Tissues. Now, connective tissues is the most diverse category when it comes to tissues. It has lots of different functions and tissues that are very structurally distinct from each other. So, for instance, functions in connective tissues include binding structures together, and this will include the tissues that make up ligaments that attach bone to bone, tendons that attach muscles to bones. They have support functions. So for bone tissue and cartilage have very important support functions, protective functions. Bone tissue again protects a lot of soft organs. Adipose tissue or fatty tissue, cartilages. It can serve as frameworks. Bones and cartilages can serve as frameworks for the body. You can just fill in spaces, put something there to surround structures and hold them in place. So that would include areolar tissue and adipose tissue. Store lipids, again, adipose tissue, that's our fatty tissue. Produce blood cells in the bone tissues and protect against infection from the blood tissue. That's right, blood is a tissue. So most, but not all, connective tissues have a lot of extracellular matrix. There's a lot of material outside of the cells. And this includes protein fibers, which kind of in this cartoon shows these little tubes or lines stretching out, and ground substance, which is just all the material between the protein fibers and the cells. And again, these are structurally very distinct. And usually the cells are pretty scattered throughout this extracellular matrix. Also, most connective tissue has blood vessels. So it's vascular, possesses blood vessels. All right, two common cells found in connective tissues. We have fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are cells that secrete the extracellular matrix. This produces the protein fibers, produces the ground substance, and they are fixed and stay in that tissue. Another would be macrophages. Macrophages are wandering cells. They are part of our immune response. So they will remove cell debris, break up cell debris, and also defend against infection. And they do this via phagocytosis. All right, there are three main kinds of connective tissue fibers. There are collagen fibers, shown in pink. Collagen fibers are long, medium-sized protein fibers. They are there for strength, so they're very good at resisting forces. They hold the tissues together, prevent the tissues from becoming torn. Then there's elastic fibers. Elastic fibers shown here. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's shown over here. They are thinner. They are very stretchy. And what they do is they give a certain amount of flexibility to the tissue. The tissue can be stretched and then return to its original shape. And then there's reticular fibers. Here's some reticular fibers. Reticular fibers also relatively thin, and they form supportive networks or meshes. So their protein fibers are branched and form sort of mesh-like structures to help be supportive, either inside an organ or surrounding an organ. And connective tissues possess anywhere from 0 to all three of these protein fibers. So 0, 1, 2, or 3 kinds of protein fibers could be present. All right, here's a list of the connective tissues that we'll be going over. We're going to start with the loose connective tissues and disconnected tissue. First up is areolar connective tissue, a loose tissue. Areolar connective tissue has lots and lots of ground substance. The cells are sort of these little darker patches scattered throughout. They are important because they help to bind body parts together, so they'll surround organs, they'll hold the organs in place, they'll help connect the organs or tissues or structures to each other. Areolar connective tissue is found in the skin and also surrounding a lot of organs. In areolar connective tissue, you can find fibroblasts that produce the extracellular material. You can find collagen fibers for strength, elastic fibers for flexibility and stretchiness. And overall, the extracellular matrix is gel-like in consistency. Then we have adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is an exception. Adipose tissue has lots of cells, but very little extracellular space. So all this white area is inside of the adipocytes, and the line going around, that is the cell membrane for the adipocyte. And basically, these adipocytes, these fat cells, store huge amounts of triglycerides, fats, and so that's what takes up the bulk of their space. And then to say the dark spot here is the nucleus. So little extracellular material is found beneath the skin in the subcutaneous layer. It's found around joints, padding the kidneys, in breasts, in the abdominal area, especially in men with beer bellies. So it has both an energy storage function and a protective function. So what type of macromolecule are fats? Proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, or nucleic acids? Well, they are lipids. Lipocyte stores lipids. All right, connective tissue, reticular connective tissue. Reticular connective tissue is found inside of some organs internally, giving the inside of that organ a internal framework, as it were. So, for instance, found inside the spleen. So you have the reticular fibers branching out, forming kind of a mesh, and that could be a good framework, giving the structure its shape. It also can act as a filter. So all these open spaces could allow some sort of fluid to pass through and be filtered. Cells found in reticular connective tissue is fibroblasts that make the extracellular material. And also white blood cells are often found in reticular connective tissue to screen the fluids that are being filtered through the mesh. Fibers, surprise, surprise, reticular fibers. And of course, as you can see, there's lots of open spaces. Then we have dense connective tissue. In dense connective tissue, it's mostly collagen fibers. And the collagen fibers are densely packed together. So if we look here, all these wavy lines, these are all collagen fibers. There are some fibroblasts scattered throughout. So say here, here's one, there's one. And the fibroblasts are there, of course, to produce more collagen fibers. Dense connective tissue is extremely strong, extremely good at resisting pulling forces. And so it's found in tendons and ligaments and also the white layer of the eyeball. All right, moving on to cartilages, bone tissue and liquid connective tissue. Cartilage. Cartilages are important. They often provide a supportive framework. So the harder part of the outer ear is given its shape by the cartilage within. Cartilage lacks a vascular system, so it's avascular. This is the exception to the rule. So it lacks blood vessels, so it heals slowly. Cartilage has chondrocytes, or cartilage cells, and they are found in little pockets or spaces called lacuna. So within the lacunae are the chondrocytes. And then the surrounding extracellular matrix is kind of gel-like in consistency. And often connective tissue structures that are vascularized lie adjacent to cartilage in order to bring blood vessels to the cartilage. So we have hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is white in color normally, and it has lots and lots of collagen fibers, but they are a little more diffuse, so you can't really see them that well with a light microscope. So here is some collagen fibers. In this extracellular material is where you would find the collagen fibers. Now, hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of bones, covering the end surfaces of bones. Also found as supportive respiratory structures and passages, so associated with respiratory structures. And hyaline cartilage is also important for embryonic development of bone and bone growth. So bone growth by length depends on the presence of hyaline cartilage within the bone itself. And embryos start off with a hyaline cartilage skeleton. Elastic cartilage. Elastic cartilage has, surprise, surprise, elastic fibers. These elastic fibers help to provide a framework for external ears and parts of the larynx. So elastic cartilage is found in the external ears and parts of the larynx. Again, you have the chondrocyte within the lacuna surrounded by the extracellular matrix, which includes elastic fibers. And finally, we have fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage also has collagen fibers. You can see them sort of stretching throughout. Fibrocartilage is very tough tissue, very strong. It's good at providing shock-absorbing functions, as well as to be able to connect things. So, for instance, the intervertebral discs between our vertebrae made up of fibrocartilage, so that when we, say, sit down really hard, our vertebrae don't clack together. Instead, that force is absorbed by the intervertebral discs. Something similar in the meniscus of knees and pubic symphysis that connects the two hip bones. All fibrocartilage. Bones. Bones are the solid connective tissue, so the one that is completely solid. It is very rigid because of that. And what makes the bone so hard is the minerals that are stored in the bone tissue, especially calcium. Bones do have collagen fibers. You can't really see them in the light microscope view, but bone tissue has plenty of collagen fibers. Give it strength. And the cells in bones are called osteocytes, and they are found in lacuna, similar to cartilage. So functions of the bone include supporting the body, providing protection, especially of delicate organs, forming attachments for muscles, storing minerals like calcium and phosphate, and acts as the site of blood cell formation. So within the red bone marrow is where blood cells are produced. Here is a wedge of bone tissue. And if we look at it, we can see there's these tiny little dark dots. Those tiny little dark dots are the lacuna, or little pockets. And within the lacuna is the osteocyte, the mature bone cell. We also have a lamella. A lamella is an actual layer of bone tissue. So one of the rings here is a lamella. Then we have the osteon. The osteon is a series of concentric rings of lamella. So lamella forming concentric rings around a space called the central canal. And the osteon is the fundamental structural unit of most bones. And then central canal is a space, a tube running through the bone at the center of the osteon. It houses blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, nerves, all the various things that you need within the bones because they are living structures. Blood. Blood is the liquid connective tissue. It has a liquid matrix called plasma. There are no protein fibers in the blood normally. Within the blood, you have red blood cells that carry oxygen. You have white blood cells for the immune response, and platelets to aid in blood clotting. So there's a teeny tiny platelet. Here's some red blood cells, and there's a white blood cell. Functions of connective tissue include blood tissue. Functions of blood tissue include transporting substances throughout the body via the cardiovascular system, and also protection because it is one of the players in our immune response. All right, and that is it for this part of Chapter 5.